Hey, what's up guys, welcome back to White Lions F1. I haven't uploaded for a while, but now we are back. It's the Chinese Grand Prix. Today is Saturday, today was qualifying. It's just finished, it's very early, so it's going to be a bit of a rushed one. I'm going to try and do this in one take. I was going to upload one yesterday about practice, but if you guys were following it, you're aware that there was pretty much nothing to talk about in practice. Practice 1, obviously on Friday I had practice 1 and 2. Practice 1, only a couple cars came out. I think Hamilton literally did one lap. And then practice 2 was completely cancelled altogether. It was constantly being delayed and then it was fully cancelled. And that's because there was a really low cloud, a rain cloud, probably mixed with a little bit of smog. And basically the emergency helicopter, which goes obviously from the racetrack to the hospital, literally couldn't fly. It couldn't see, it couldn't land. So they said it's just too dangerous, which is, you know, it's extremely frustrating, especially for the fans. Hamilton actually, shout out to him, did a wonderful job and got some man points for at least going out and trying to connect to the audience, to the fans who had waited so patiently, and try and give them something back for the fact that they came all this way and they couldn't see any real driving. But you know, it's on safety ground, so you have to understand it. It's a bit annoying, especially because the Porsche Super Cup Porsche cars raced literally the moment the F1 cars were cleared out of the way. The Porsches were out there racing, so it was a bit annoying, but you know, I mean, they're not as dangerous as F1 cars, so you know. Anyways, today was practice 3 and qualifying. So I've got the I'm staring at the practice timesheets, and it's kind of business as usual, what you expect. Ferrari were on top. In fact, they 1 and 2 both were on top. Kimi was actually really close to Vettel, which he actually wasn't in qualifying, but at least he was in practice. I don't know if the setup just wasn't working for him in Q3, but that's for a later matter. Bottas came third. Hamilton came fourth. I think he made a little bit of a tiny mess up on his fastest lap. So you know, that's why he came fourth. Lance Stroll did a good job. He came 8th, which is not bad at all, considering how shocking, utterly shocking his race was last week. In fact, his entire weekend was, not last week, 2 weeks ago, sorry, in Australia. It's really good to see him that at least he's getting more out of the car. And in fact, I think it was Brundle was saying that he seemed a lot more calm. He was working with the car rather than against it. He wasn't pushing it as much. He was just letting the car do its thing. And obviously, China with this kind of track, I think the main straight is about 1.2 kilometers long. It's a really long engine orientated track. So the fact that he's got that Williams engine with that power, he doesn't really need to, you know, push too hard. Well, I mean, you know what I mean. He doesn't need to explore the limits too much to get a decent lap time, and that, you know, it really showed. He had a much more controlled Saturday. Fernando Alonso is all the way down there in 17th for the McLaren. Stoffel Van Dorn is down in 19th, and you got a feel for Alonso. He is pushing like an animal, as he always keeps saying, and I actually clocked with it. I actually found it, which is. I want to tell you about the speed trap. So the fastest I saw McLaren do the speed trap is 315 kilometers an hour. By contrast, all the other cars were doing about 10 kilometers an hour faster. And you've got to bear in mind that the McLaren was using its ERS system, its energy recovery system, to get that added boost. And they used the entirety of that boost on that one straight. And they only had enough. They used the whole thing, and it ran out about halfway in. And the other cars weren't even using their boost on full, but the McLarens didn't have a choice. They had to give all of it, and they still were about 10 kilometers an hour slower on that straight. So it really shows the power struggle that they've got in that McLaren. It's a real shame for them. But now that's pretty much all I can talk about for practice. I'm going to fly straight on to qualifying, and I'm going to have to sort of stop and keep looking at my notes to get it done properly. So Q1, these are the cars that came out that were knocked out. Stoffel Van Dorn 16th, Grosjean 17th, Palmer 18th, Verstappen 19th, and Ocon 20th. Now I want to make it clear that first of all, Verstappen was knocked out. He's all the way down in 19th, not because he made any errors, but because there was an engine issue, or rather a software issue. Something about mode 10, he just couldn't get it. Every time he went into that mode on the in the engine, something would screw up. He tried to put it into the backup, which is mode 12, I think it was. It just wasn't working out for him. He didn't have a choice but to power through it, and he just couldn't get out of that position. Grosjean and Ocon, actually, in fact, pretty much all of them apart from Van Dorn, were very heavily compromised because Giovinazzi, as you shall see now, had a huge crash on the final corner. He's going round. It seems okay. He's going to have a really good lap time. And just like he did in Australia, he screwed up his qualifying right at the end. He basically hit the AstroTurf and he just lit up the rears. The grass, that Astro is a little bit wet as well from yesterday. And it just completely slid and went straight into the wall, completely took it out. And it was actually very reminiscent of Grosjean, only earlier in qualifying, right at the start of Q1, I think it was. I think it was at the start of Q1. He literally did pretty much the exact same thing, except he didn't hit the Astros. He just lit up the rears before the Astros and then went straight towards the wall. The only difference then was Grosjean was lucky. He got on the brakes nice and early, kept the car straight, and he managed to stay away from the barrier. Unfortunately for Giovinazzi, he was so committed and it was in such an awkward place, he just went flying straight into the wall. These kind of things happen. He'll learn. He was just a little bit too excited on the throttle. The funny thing is, it actually worked out in favour for him because Grosjean was gonna probably improve. Palmer was definitely going to improve. Ocon was definitely going to improve. And by crashing out, he actually avoided being knocked out in Q1. So the funny thing is, by crashing and screwing up the car, he actually did himself a massive favour. Chances are he's probably going to get a penalty, I would assume. I haven't heard of it yet, but probably will happen. And the weird thing is, Grosjean and Palmer are both being investigated because they both drove past Giovinazzi's crashed car and still accelerated past, but they'd already slowed down prior, so I don't think they'll get a penalty for it, but they are being investigated for it. So it'd be a real slap in the face if either of them two get a penalty, as well as having their lap compromised because of the crash. So that'd be quite funny to see how that pans out. Oh yeah, and Van Dorn, 16th. What do you expect? So looking at the cars that were knocked out in Q2, Giovinazzi, obviously he's knocked out, he's in 15th. Ericsson 14th, Alonso 13th, he'll be really happy with that. Magnussen in 12th and Carlos Sainz in 11th. Alonso will be really happy with that 13th. I think that's literally the absolute most you'll ever get out of that McLaren. He's really overdriving that car. He's actually doing a phenomenal job. It's only been 2 races, but his experience and his talent is really showing through. I don't know how he's driving the nuts of it, as I said earlier, and as he keeps quoting, driving like an animal. So, huge credit to him. Ericsson, probably the best he'll get out of that car. And then kind of the rest sort of speak for themselves. You can sort of imagine, you can see the trend that you can see, which is that the Mercedes cars are right at the top. They were obviously going to get into Q3 because of the track they're in. That Mercedes power just flying them straight through. Even the Ferraris as well. There's not really much to say about the cars that knocked out in Q2. It just kind of was what it was. It was undramatic. But the standout obviously was the 13th position of Alonso. Finally, for Q3, and instead of going from 10th to 1st, I'm going to go from 1st to 10th. Kind of makes sense when you hear about it. Lewis Hamilton qualified for pole again. He's only the 2nd driver in F1 history to get 6 consecutive pole positions in qualifying at least. In fact, he's tied that record with none other than Ayrton Senna. So that is quite phenomenal, to say the absolute least. And you never know if one more race away and he's gonna break that record. So that's wonderful for him. He actually improved twice in his. He actually improved over his fastest lap in his Q3, because obviously in Q3 they go out, they do a fast lap, then they go back in the pits, come back out and do another one. Hamilton was just phenomenal, absolutely on it. And you could tell that he was going to improve when he came out for his final run, because in his one previously, when he went pole, in that one, he had this slight oversteering moment. The car was so planted. It's truly gorgeous watching that Mercedes around that track, and even the Ferrari. In fact, maybe even more the Ferrari than the Mercedes. But you get the point. They're so fast. They're so planted. It's incredible how they carry that much speed and the drivers take that much force. And he actually had this slight overcorrection, and that was it was clear that he had time to make still. Sebastian Vettel came 2nd. He actually got ahead of Valtteri Bottas by 1/1000th of a second. That's how close it was. That's how much he had to push to get through. But that 1/1000th of a second is the one that's going to put him on the front row. So that 1/1000th is a huge influence in the race tomorrow. Bottas 3rd, as I said. Raikkonen kind of got left behind by the front 3. He was about 3/10 behind Bottas all the way back in 4th. So, you know, I don't really know where he suddenly lost that pace, because in Q2 he was pretty solid and he was looking like actually he's going to compete for first. And then Q3 came around, he just really wasn't there. Ricardo did the best he could. Actually, I think he will actually be kind of impressed with, happy with himself to get up there. Massa came sixth, kind of expected. Hulkenberg, all the way there in seventh. That is a wonderful lap time. That is incredible. Then, I think that Renault will be really, really pleased with that. It's actually worth pointing out though that seventh to first. Look at the difference. Seventh and eighth particularly. Sergio Perez. He's 2 seconds slower. 2 seconds slower than the Mercedes. That is the gap between the front pack and the middle pack. 2 seconds from first to seventh. That is insane. So then Sergio Perez 8th. Kvyat 9th. I think that's a solid performance. Lance Stroll 10th. He probably could have got further up without Williams, but you know what? I think he'll take it. It doesn't say the whole story, because as we saw 2 weeks ago in Australia, quali does kind of say what we expect, but then race pace is different to quali pace. Outright speed seems like the Mercedes is faster, but the Mercedes car doesn't seem particularly good following other cars, and the Ferrari does seem super confident driving driving behind other cars and not being compromised. So race pace is very different to this. Seb is definitely in contention to win that race. In fact, I would say he's the favourite to win the race because of what we learnt from 2 weeks back in Australia. However, Hamilton is driving absolutely phenomenal, really well at the moment, so he's going to be extremely happy with that. That's pretty much all I've got to say for qualifying. Just kind of throw it at you, just to let you guys know what's up. This is a pretty quick one. I'm trying to do it with as little takes as possible and little editing as possible. Just because I need to get this edited and go to work. Yeah, thank you so much for watching, guys. Please give it a thumbs up if you've enjoyed. Comment below any suggestions. Stay tuned, because tomorrow is the race and I'm going to get that video out as quick as possible. If I'm going to watch it live and immediately start recording and editing, getting it out. So look out for that. Look out for that early morning. Yeah, subscribe. Stay tuned for more. Stay tuned for tomorrow. Share this video. That'd be amazing. And I'll see you guys later.